Frank Gallagher, Father of the Year. In no way, shape, or form is that true, but he still is one of the most iconic TV characters of all time, and I think that has plenty to do with William H. Macy's brilliantly portrayed acting of Frank Gallagher. Frank is despicable. He's narcissistic. He's a terrible father. But yet, we still kind of love Frank Gallagher in this weird way. But season one, man, Frank does some really shitty things. So let's talk about him. Multiple times in the first episode, we see Frank passed out on his living room floor. And in this scene right here, we have Ian and Fiona pretty much talking about how rough life is. And you can tell Ian cannot stand his father, Frank. And then the scene goes on to really show the frustration and the pressure that Fiona is under. And the main reason is because the mom left, and Frank, while he is around, really isn't around. He's not a father at all. And this 21-year-old girl has to pick up the pieces and run this family all by herself, while this man is passed out on his living room floor for most of her life.
Good job, Fiona. I don't know how I could do this without you. Thanks for all your hard work.
Frank also has no problem getting violent. In fact, early on in episode 2, he's coming home from the bar. As you can see, he's all beaten up and bloody and decides to take it out on his 15-year-old son. What a role model here as he decides to headbutt Ian. Good job, Frank. Good job. Now, there's a lot of bad things that we can say about Frank, but you cannot call him dumb. This man managed to defraud the Social Security system for years as he has been cashing Aunt Ginger's checks. The problem is Aunt Ginger is dead, and when somebody from Social Security comes to investigate the fraud, the Gallaghers spring into action, and what they do is they find an old woman who is suffering from dementia from a nursing home that Veronica works at. They bring her home and pass her off as Aunt Ginger. Now, this lady, God bless her, she's bad shit crazy. Again, she's suffering from dementia, so she is not coherent. She cannot answer this lady's questions. And right, they let her live with her for a few days. They take some pictures, and they are able to pass her off as Aunt Ginger. So one, Frank doesn't get in trouble, and two, the checks keep coming, even though Aunt Ginger is dead. He's smart, he's resourceful, but he has no shame at all. And being smart and not having any shame allows him to take advantage of sweet Sheila Jackson, masterfully played by Joan Cusack here. Sheila is agoraphobic. She is terrified of the outside world, which is perfect. Frank can be his disgusting self outside, and Sheila will never know. And Frank can come home, and Sheila cooks for him and bathes him and gives him a nice warm place to stay and takes care of him. And she has no idea who Frank really is outside of the house. It's really the best of both worlds for Frank, as he's able to be despicable Frank outside and then reap the benefits of a nice, loving woman once he comes home. I guess the only caveat would be that Frank does have to partake in Sheila's kinkiness in the bedroom, but we do not kink shame on this channel. Calling Frank Gallagher an alcoholic would be a huge understatement. This scene right here is him waking up after being passed out for 2 days with alcohol poisoning. And this group of doctors are fascinated by him still being alive and by the amount of alcohol poisoning that he had. So while he wakes up and he thinks they are offering him an orgy with this woman and these two guys, what they are actually doing is offering him $3,000 to stay sober for 2 weeks and for them to study it. Now, he's all for it. Sadly, the kids make him lose, and the reason is so sad. Frank has such an immediate impact on the people that he meets that Steve, Fiona's new boyfriend, quickly realizes how much of a problem Frank is, and he devises a plan to get rid of him. He gets him so drunk, again, Frank being an alcoholic is an understatement, so drunk that Frank passes out and Steve is able to smuggle him over the Canadian border. Frank wakes up and has no idea how he got to Toronto, Canada, but Fiona's not happy once she finds out. They've got to come up with a plan to get Frank back without a passport. Crazy. Now, I think the fact that William H. Macy never won an Emmy for his role as Frank Gallagher is, I could do a whole video on how he got robbed. Honestly, I think it's because Shameless never doesn't really fit into a category. They kept putting it up for comedy, which it is a comedy, but it's also a drama, yada yada yada. But William H. Macy as Frank is able to go off on these rants and raves and monologues, and you know that he is so full of shit, but he's so elegant and just, really sells it off that you have to stop and think. You're like, is he actually serious? Does he believe in what he says? William H. Macy kills this. Frank is a smart dude. He's well communicated. Again, you know he is full of shit, but he almost makes you get to believe that he is not full of shit. It's masterful. Frank's always looking for a handout. Doesn't matter who he's taking from. Would even take from his own kids, actually does. This scene right here is from, I think, the best episode of Shameless, the one where Debbie decides to kidnap a little kid. Now, the Gallaghers, again, have to come up with a scheme to figure a way out of this, and they make it look like Debbie is actually the one that saves the kid. And so parents and other community members try to give a reward to Debbie, really just start throwing money at her. And who is the first person that comes in and tries to scoop up the money and take pretty much, take credit for it all? Of course, it is Frank Gallagher. Look at him picking up the money. But watch this. Lip and Ian and Carl are there. They know that what Frank's about to try and do, and they make sure that that money goes to Debbie. Frank trying to steal from his 9-year-old, 10-year-old daughter. Wow. There's pretty much a theme in the first season of Shameless. Frank or another Gallagher does something stupid, and they have to figure out a way out of it. Here, Frank is faking his own death. Now, these two Irishmen are a part of a gang where Frank was supposed to do a job for them, and he ended up not doing it. And he ended up owing them money. And here they are, out for the money. Frank has no money, so they're basically wanting to kill him. So, to get out of it, he decides to fake his own death. Now, here he is in a casket. He is passed out thanks to a tranquilizer that Veronica hooks up. The Gallaghers, along with Kevin, steal a hearse and a casket so they can put Frank in it and make it look like a legit funeral. And then the Gallaghers all play a pretty good part in acting that they are sad that Frank is dead. Now, here's where it gets really crazy. This guy is on the phone with his boss. He is supposed to get a finger or a toe and take it back with him as proof of evidence that Frank is actually dead. Now, the Gallaghers anticipate this. Carl's out there. He is going to set a distraction by throwing a bowling ball through their window, and the Irishmen take off. The Gallaghers pull it off. Frank is saved once again by his family. It's hard to rank the worst things that Frank does in season one because there are so many, and so many are vile. But hooking up with Karen Jackson might be, you could argue, is the worst one. Now, Karen is the, 16-year-old girlfriend of Lip. Now, to be fair, Karen is the one who seduces him, and Frank is drugged, and then Karen's the one who records it and sets it all up. But Frank still could have and should have said no and stopped it, and he didn't. And this is when Lip finds out. He runs him over and decides to beat the ever-living shit out of him. It gets pretty bad here. If Kevin doesn't come and stop Lip, who knows what would have happened. It's hard to say that Frank doesn't deserve this, but Karen also is the worst person in Shameless, and that's even worse than Frank. This is a little later on. Frank's already gotten his ass beat by Lip, And he goes to the house and begs and pleads for Lip to forgive him. And this is just another scene where William H. Macy puts on a display, a spectacle of a monologue where he's blaming Karen, but he's also apologizing, and he's saying that him and Lip are both the victims of women. And again, it's all bullshit, and it's narcissistic, and it's selfish. But he is out there begging and pleading for his son to forgive him. So, this right here does show that he does have some heart, some sympathy, some compassion for his son. After all, he did sleep with his son's girlfriend. Honestly, if you really think about it, with how disgusting it is with how old he is and how young Karen is, it actually really is very disgusting. Again, Karen was the instigator, but, right, we might do a whole video on how terrible Karen is. And here, Lip is forgiving him, but before he forgives him, he's going to pee on his father. And Frank decides that this is an acceptable punishment, and he takes it. Well, he takes it pretty well. Just stands there, and he lets Lip pee on him. Frank deserves it. Good job, Lip. And this goes to show you, though, like how numb these kids are. Right? Frank has disappointed and done disgusting things to Lip his whole life. And so after beating him up and peeing on him, Lip is able to forgive him just like that. Now, we could go on and on and on about all of the terrible things that Frank did in just season one of Shameless. But at the end of the day, season one foreshadowed what Frank was going to be like for the rest of the series. He's an alcoholic, he's a narcissistic, he's selfish, he never takes any accountability, and he just might be the worst father of all time. Whether he is scheming, trying to get workman's comp or disability, whether he's cashing dead people's social security checks, whether he's stealing from his kids, whether he is banging his kids' girlfriends. There's really nothing that Frank wouldn't do. But because William H. Macy is such a great actor, Frank quickly became one of the most iconic characters in TV history. And think about this, as bad as he was in season one, he got even worse as the series went on. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Leave a comment. What big moment in season one of Frank's did I miss that you would like me to have covered? And I will respond, and I will see you guys next week with another video on Shameless.